Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Or afternoon,
or afternoon, or evening. If you're sipping martini and enjoying this webinar, this video with champagne, that's all cool. But here on the East Coast of the United States, it is morning. And so we're wishing you a good morning and welcome to yet another Compliance Corner. I am Orly Burlov, and here's my colleague, Noelle Vestal.
Hello.
Say hi.
Hi.
And we are honored today to have with us Jill Lawson from EisnerAmper Digital. Jill, can you just introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for inviting me to do this and getting me the mind juices rolling early in the morning. I appreciate that.
We use coffee for that.
Yeah, amen.
And I have a lot of tea.
Here we go. I spent over 32 years in the Department of Defense. I was a Marine for 8 years, and then I transitioned and got my college degree, and then re-entered the DoD workforce as a civilian, working at a family library. And then I finally was able to get a position at Marine Corps Systems Command in the Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act, DOIA office, and I was the registrar for Defense Acquisition University. Then I was able to do a lateral move to actually become an acquisition program manager. And I spent a few more years, about 6 more years at Marine Corps Systems Command. And then I was lucky enough that when Marine Corps Special Operations Command, MARSOC, was stood up, they needed to have an acquisition PM down in that horrible, terrible place, MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida.
Hey. Some of us are from Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, somebody just has to, bear that beautiful weather and, no snow. And
she's not kidding. It's literally shoulders. Yeah, it's right on the water. It's
so I held up my hand.
It's very pretty.
So I was lucky enough to end up there. And then I spent several years as an acquisition program manager working acquisition programs. But then I was afforded the opportunity to be the acquisition PM policy manager for SOF ATNL. And I worked for the deputy acquisition executive. And hence, in that position, back in 2018, 2019 timeframe, I was representing SOF at OSD level committees. And one of those committees, we were told about this brand new thing called the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and we were asked to comment on it, bring it back to organizations, get comments from organizations, bring it back, the drill. So that's how I became really, really interested in the CMC, which is, this industry is a lot more than just a CMC, but that was what really piqued my interest, is getting that third-party certification process, leveled out. So when I retired in 2019, then COVID hit. I just hung around. I didn't go back to work, but I got really, really invested in investigating how this brand new industry was standing up. And I, became a part of it, became a formal employee, January 2022. So for 2 years, I was just kind of hanging out, learning, listening. I'm
really a groupie of ours.
Yeah, I did. I saw all you. Again, you listen. Yes, I've seen almost everyone. If I've missed him, is because first, I might have already learned about that subject. But it was very interesting learning from Prevail.
Right. So when we see one person watched our video, we know who it was.
You've got over 1,000. You got
Jill.
I know. I see the count, ladies.
Well, thank you.
You rocking it. Yeah,
we appreciate it, and I love the fact that you have the sort of viewpoint from the other side. I have the viewpoint more of having to go through it as a contractor. You have that viewpoint of it as what it's like on the government side, which I think is really, really important for people to understand, because it sort of closes that loop. There are those questions we have on the outside of how did that end up like that? Or why is this way? And I think that you can kind of give a little bit more color to a lot of those different things. So I'm really excited to talk about this June memo with you, because I know you're going to have so many interesting things to say about it that I never would have thought of.
All right. So the reason why we asked Jill to come on, besides the fact that she seems like a really nice person and has a great world of experience in the DoD space,
right,
is to talk about this DoD June memo. All right. So if you haven't heard about the DoD June memo, you should read it. There's going to be a link in the show notes to what it is. But I have a copy of it, and I could read it, like a politician. or I could read it like Jim Dale, who narrates all of the Harry Potter books,
Yeah.
who I love. But I'm not that talented. So I'll just take a very short piece and kind of tell you what this DoD June Memo is about. And the main thing that we want Jill to help us with here is to say, help you understand what are the main takeaways and what they mean for you. Because I know just talking around Prevail, a lot of people read this and came to wildly divergent summaries on what the DoD was really asking of people. And so I think that the DoD must have written a perfect memo if that's kind of the result. Everyone has a different opinion, but I digress. All right, let us just start with this subject. Contractual remedies to ensure contractor compliance with DFARS Clause 252.204-7012 for contracts and orders not subject to Clause 252.204-7020. That's the clause that came out in the DFARS interim rule, referring to the SPRS score. And it goes on to say, and additional considerations regarding NIST 800-171 Department of Defense assessments. Long title. All right. So here, there's a lot. This thing is 3 pages long, and I'm not going to bore you with all of it. But let me just go to the second page at the very bottom. And I think this is really what the core of the document is about. And it's meant to be a reminder to contracting officers. But if it's talking to contracting officers, it's also talking to defense organizations, because they are the ultimate consumer end user who gets the information from the contracting officer. And so let me just read this short paragraph and then we'll jump to Jill. It says, contracting officers are also reminded, in accordance with DFARS 204.7303, section B2, if a contractor is required by a contract containing DFARS clause 252.204-7012 to implement NIST SP 800-171 on a covered contractor information system relevant to a new contract, option exercise, contract extension, or new procurement modification, task order, or delivery order, the contracting officer must verify prior to award that the contractor has the summary level score of a current NIST SP 800-171 DoD assessment for the system posted in SPRS. This requirement applies even if the new award does not include DFARS clause 252.204-7020. Okay. So that's a lot. Why? So, Noelle, before we just start jumping in and asking Jill a bunch of questions, because I know she has a couple of main takeaways, can you just translate that text into English for us?
Well, it was one of those things where when I read it, I was like, oh, okay. All right. DoD is starting to get some teeth to this. I have been on multiple different compliance calls, and we have a lot of, I get on a lot of our potential sales calls as well. And I have calls with our internal customers as well. And I have heard more times than I can even tell you, oh, well, I don't have a 70-20 clause. I don't have a 70-19 clause. I don't have to do SPRS. Like, it's fine. Nobody's asked me to do it, so I don't have to do it. Well, now you really do have to do it. And now the DoD is saying, no, I understand that you thought you didn't have to do it. You have to do it now. And it's also saying that it's putting the onus and the work on the contracting officer to make sure that you do it. So it's not just, hey, we really, really want you to do this, and we're then going to just kind of ignore it for a while and not talk to you about it. It's, no, you need to do this because the contracting officer, regardless of whether or not there is a clause like that or not, is going to have to verify that you've done it. So for those people who thought that they were kind of like out of the loophole, like, this is fine, the DoD is like, no. It's obvious to me that this memo is the movement forward of trying to get everyone to put in an SPRS score, no matter what kind of contract they have, no matter what they're doing with the DoD, making sure that everybody is on the same page, because we're moving forward to that whole CMMC ecosystem being the standard, right? Where every person, essentially, you got to think of the idea that at the end of this, the goal, right, at the end, is that every single member of the DIB who deals with CUI will have a CMMC level 2, authentication, a certification. And anybody who, needs level 1 or level 3 or whatever, everybody's going to have that. If that's the goal, it makes total sense to me that this is what they're pushing us towards, right? This is that sort of I think Jill and I have talked about this before, where it's like the crawl, walk, run approach is what they've always
I love
used.
that.
But this is like the jog. This is like we did the crawling a while ago when we put it out there, and then we like walked where it was like kind of happening, and now this is like not the run exactly, but this is like the jogging. We're
It's a warm up. It's a warm up jog.
It's like a warm up jog. You're picking up.
You sweat with a warm up jog?
Yeah, sir. It can be a warm up jog. Yeah. Whatever.
Right. And the actual
up there and just start. I know you have a ton to say, so let's just start digging in with you. I mean, so Noelle just kind of translated the legalese I read into English. What are what is your understanding, and what are your takeaways there?
Okay, first of all, there were 3 big takeaways, but before I discuss those takeaways, I like to set the scene. You are a contracting officer. You have got a great relationship, or at least a steady state of communication with all of your contractors.
I am a great contracting officer. I like it. Okay, so
awesome.
I'm on top of it.
Right, and then you get transferred.
As happens all the time.
Somebody new transfers in, and they have a very specific ideology on how to manage that contract. And just to put it out there for everybody to understand, when companies sign a contract with the government, it is an attestation saying that I can provide proof of compliance upon request.
See that
even though it's not really, some contracts, depending on the complexity and the dollar amount and stuff like that, that there are contract clauses that really, really lay that out. Other contracts, maybe not so much. And so contracts are like thumbprints. Each one is individual. Each one was created with a different team, and those team members have transferred out, and more people are transferred in. I mean, the entire defense industrial base industry is just based on flux and based on personalities. Unfortunately, is really personality driven. It's not always
very much
regulatory and statutory driven, but at any rate, that's just a given. So the new contracting officer comes in, and then they're like, "Oh no, I want to see proof. I want to see that." And this is brand new to the contract, to the contractors. Then there's pushback. It's just chaos, and it's just terrible. So as a result, a lot of the contracting officers, through discussions with acquisition and sustainment has retained control of contract management of these clauses. Now, the DoD CIO has taken, they're the NIST 800-171 technical guys, but the actual contract clauses, and contract management is retained in acquisition and sustainment. So A&S is like, oh, this is so confusing. Each contracting officer has different personalities. We're getting all these complaints. So then it's okay, let's clarify this. And so the clarification, based upon the legal precedents that the DoD can require proof upon, can demand proof upon request, they said, okay, we'll just clarify this. And for the contracts that do not have the DFARS 252.204/7020, which is DoD assessment methodology, since that isn't spawned in the contract, we're still going to say we need for you to provide us that proof. And the only way that we will accept proof is that you follow the procedures that are in the DoD assessment methodology. And even though it's not in the clause, read the clause, the DFARS 252.204/7020 clause. Read that anyway, because it spells out what the government requires for proof. So that's
a question. Yeah. So this was an example I was thinking about earlier, and I think it might just kind of spell it out a little bit more clearly. Someone has a contract from before the 7020 clause was ever put in, right? Let's say from 2019, 2018, and they're still working on that DFARS contract today. They didn't have an SPRS score because they had self-attested at that point as it was required in DFARS. What would you say is their requirement if they don't have anything in SPRS today?
Right. If they have the 7012 clause and that was included on their base year contract or added in on additional option year contracts, regardless if the 7020 clause is put in, you still have to have proof that you've implemented that 7012 clause. period.
I think the part that is such a big takeaway when you said it to me, I was like, ooh, like if we could like flash this in red on the screen right now, right? Like with blinking lights. If you sign a contract with the government, it doesn't matter what clause is not in there. It really doesn't, because if they ask you to verify, you are saying that I will be able to verify what you need at any time when asked. Like that's such a big thing to take away, that yes, it has been that everybody's sort of been like the Wild West, right? And they can just kind of do, it's like, oh yeah, sure. Like I'm doing this cybersecurity stuff, like totally. And now the DoD obviously is paying more attention. It's becoming much more of, a national headlines kind of situation, but it doesn't matter. It's always been this way. It has always been this way, where the government could ask you, I need a verification that you're actually doing this. And you would have to be able to give it to them. So like you said, if you have a 70-12 clause, the 70-19 and 70-20 are all well and good. But if you have that 70-12, you already kind of were having a 70-20 anyway before it ever existed, because they could ask for that verification at any time.
It's just that the 70-20, codified what that verification looks like.
But it was already there. Yeah. And that's a good note.
For a self-assessment.
Right.
And then the CMC, when the CMC clause gets released, it's going to codify what a third-party assessment program looks like. So we all know about it. They've been advertising it, and that's why our industry is here and loving and cooking right now. So the first takeaway is that 70-12 clause. If you have it, you have to do is a SPURS score. Now, in order to do a SPURS score, the very first thing you have to do is a system security plan, and that is the NIST 800-171A. The NIST 800-171 has 110 controls, but the 171A provides the objectives, and you have to meet all those objectives to pass the control. So it's better just do the 71A. Then there's a DoD scoring methodology. After you complete the 171A, your system, I call it the COI SSP. Once you complete your COI SSP, then you use the DoD assessment methodology, which starts at 110 and subtracts either 1, 3, or 5 points for controls that are not successfully implemented. And that's the score. What is required is that you upload that summary score, upload the COI SSP that was actually evaluated, and then if it's less than 110, upload your POAMs. So anyway, that's the requirement, and that's what this memo is saying, that the contracting officers, regardless of anything else in your universe, before you interact with that company and allow them to continue with their contract with an option year, or if you're going to modify or whatever you're doing, you have to verify that score is there. Now, it's not saying validate the efficacy of it. That's going to be, like we talked about the run, like in the jogging stage, that's going to be the running stage. And that's another conversation we'll have. But at any rate, though, that has to be verified. Now, so the first takeaway is that if you have the 70-12 clause, you have to do that. The second takeaway is contracting officers cannot arbitrarily tell contractors that their score has to meet a medium or a high assurance. And let me talk a little bit about that. Yes, there are 3 assurance levels. One is a low assurance level, and that's a self-assessment, putting up there, doing it yourself, right? There's low assurance it's accurate. I'll just be honest with you. It's just low assurance.
So I think Dave McEwen in our DoD webinars said as much, right? He said there's a great discrepancy between what people are reporting and the actuality.
Oh yeah, he said a pretty high percentage he thinks are really completely
Therein
off.
lies the shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, more to follow on that too, I promise you.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot. That's a whole nother podcast right there about what's going to happen with that eventuality. But then there's the medium assurance score. Medium assurance scores are for contracts that have critical technologies in the contracts to a weapon system or part of the battlefield space that is just critical. And the program manager and this in their program protection plan, that's where they identify if it's a medium or a high assurance. So there's a real document that a lot of people put together that come to that determination. So if that determination is there, it's for a serious purpose. Oh, sorry. Then then there's the high assurance, and the high assurance, I assume, are for commingled contracts where there's controlled and classified and controlled technical information, in addition to classified information, secret or top secret. So that would be a high assurance. And again, that's defined in the program protection plan. And the contractors should have all that spelled out in their DD 254, the contractors security performance plan.
Yep.
So at any rate, the contracting officer cannot automatically assign any contractor that medium or high assurance requirement. They first have to meet with the program management office, and they also have to meet with Defense Contract Management Agency, DSMA, Certification Assessment Center, DIPCAC. And the DIPCAC and the PM and the contracting officer all have to have this conversation. They cannot be arbitrarily. So reined in the contracting officers too.
Okay.
And
so the third, should we talk about the third takeaway?
Yeah, and the third takeaway is that the contracting officer is going to enforce this because their career kind of depends on it. You have to, again, couch this and think about, put yourselves in their shoes, their evaluation, and what this is July 2022. Well, the performance evaluations, the end of the fiscal year is September 30th, right? So now people are getting ready for the performance evaluations. So, timing is everything. So this memo came out, for performance evaluations, and so this is very, very serious. And this really is the wake-up call, that any of the contractors, and my customers too, have also said, well, I'm not really sure, I'm going to wait. Okay. Listen to your peril, because at this point in time, reports are being ran. Contracting officers understand what prime and subcontractors have got those scores in there. And if they also have the SSC in there, if they have all the required uploading information in there or not. And then they're going to take actions. And those actions can be in the form, of a non-compliance letter, which is pretty gentle, like, okay, we're just nudging you, do this, do that. Let us know what's going on, get it done as soon as possible. Let us know when you're going to get it done. Or it could be a cure letter, 10 days, or we're canceling the contract.
Right.
The contracting officers have that entire, breadth and depth of how they want to communicate with the contractors. But no, some communication at some kind of way is going to come back to every single prime or subcontractor, and I will even say suppliers that do not have that score up there.
I think you made you made so many good points there, but one of the big ones that I think that our audience, I hope, takes away from this is that not only is this something that, has come down now and it's like, hey, no, we're really going to check these, but what you just said about how the end of the fiscal year and people are getting their evaluations done. I mean, September is not that far from now. So I agree with you. Timing is everything. And it would not surprise me at all. Like you're saying, people are running reports as we speak and looking at things right now, in the coming weeks, very soon weeks, I would imagine, probably, especially in August, I would be very surprised if all these contracting officers who in September are going to get these evaluations on themselves wouldn't start sending out this stuff like crazy. So I think we say it all the time, and I don't know how many different ways we can say it, but get on it now. You need to be doing this stuff now.
And also there's sweep up money at the end of the year. There's sweep up money.
Yep.
Wow.
Right. So can they didn't really say it, but I don't know if there's question. You're putting yourself at risk to not be able to to benefit from that sweep up money, because that's a contract action.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so if they have to, add different delivery dates or speed up delivery, do anything to the contract that I don't know, it might be interpreted by the colonels or the senior contracting officers leadership that we can't even get the sweep up money until we see that score.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't. You
so many different ways. Yeah,
right. So between
so
sweep up money and
enforcement here.
Yeah, there's different ways there are so many different ways that this can trickle down that you're not even thinking about. I mean, again, it really does astound me that I still am having conversations with people who are like, oh, well, like, I don't need to worry about that. It's just, yes, you do. Please worry about it. Please, we're begging you to worry about it. Please save yourself some trouble. Worry about it now.
We're worrying about this on your account, and we're not even your mother. Right.
But yeah, I got to tell you something. We have to have competition in the DoD. A long time ago, I was in some of these, Homeland gave a presentation, and it was estimated that there could be up to 30% loss in the small business arena because of not only just because of this requirement, but also people in this brand new industry are false prophets. They don't really deliver. Getting that company closer to the proof they need to give to the government, whether it be a self-assessment or whether it's CMC assessment, a third-party assessment. So because of that, also discernment is really, really needed to understand what kind of contractors that you want to trust, really, with your company's ability to be competitive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just it. Absolutely. And I'll just go on a limb here and say, I'm a contractor, but this is not just about advertising what I'm about, but really, literally, look for consultants that really understand the DFARS language.
Amen.
That's the first thing.
Yeah,
and then understand what is the DoD COI program. In March of 2020, DoD created their own COI program, and they created a DoD instruction 52,000.48, which is aptly named COI. But the DoD COI program is different than the federal government COI program because of the contractual requirements and the implications of the contracts. Right. So understand that, and then understand NIST. And then understand CMC. It takes a team. It takes a team of experience because there's nobody out there that has really in-depth knowledge with all those four elements because this is a new industry. Absolutely. But instead, get a team. Make sure that whoever you deal with has a team of people that has expertise in each of those areas.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's something that we talked about so many different times. I don't even know how many times Orly and I have talked about this on different things in different ways.
False prophets.
No, but we've had this conversation so many times about being very discerning about the people you pick because unfortunately there's like those snake oil salesmen out there who are like, oh, hey, I'll come in here and in 2 days you're going to have 110 out of 110 and like, don't you worry, I'm going to take care of it.
The other day, Noelle, that you had someone on the phone who was told that it would cost them $100,000 to get CMMC level 2 compliant, and then
for one person,
and then they talked to vendor number 2 who said that they could get to 110 controls in 3 days.
3 days, it was crazy. This poor person had been just through the ringer, right? And had talked to a bunch of. It was interesting though to hear their experience because they had so many different people they talked to from different companies and had just the gamut, really had run from, this person told me that it was the first person that they spoke with, it was $100,000. And again, it was a one-person company. It was very, micro company. So one person, one endpoint, one everything, $100,000. And then it would take like 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
And then the next person that this customer talked to, it was, oh, well, if you give me $5,000, I can do that in 3 days. Just you'll have 110 in 3 days. Perfect 110.
This is why we're going to lose because, and as Americans, forgive businessman, just as Americans, I promise you, we have to have competition. Yeah. Without competition, our defense will suffer. Yeah. And like literally, this little brand new industry really is integral to the defense of America. And so these shysters that are out there, luckily the CMMC the Cyber Accreditation Board, they're starting to have a way to report. But that's going to be more is going to come to that. Yeah. But I anticipate some serious lawsuits. I anticipate some serious lawsuits.
You're right. And you're right. You're talking about the incident reporting, with the Cyber AB, which they've been trying to put together, and sort of the maturity level is not 100% right now, but they are at least starting to do that because of this exact thing. where there's not necessarily a whole lot of regulation out there. Cause like you said, this is kind of still new. It's only been a few years that CMMC has been out there. So, I mean, it's not that obviously NIST has been around for a lot longer, but CMMC is still, kind of a baby in the marketplace. And so it's very easy for somebody to say, oh yeah, I'm a registered practitioner organization. I took the class, like I'm fine. But like you pointed out so beautifully, what other experience do they have? Like, I mean, if the only
practical real world experience.
Exactly. If the only thing, I mean, like I'm a registered RP, but that's just one thing. You have to look at everything else that I've done, and it's a holistic view. And I think that that's what people need to really be doing, is what you pointed out. Do they have an understanding of DFARS? Do they have DoD experience? I mean, that's simple. Have they ever had to actually work with companies who are in the DIB going through these things? What kind of success rate have they had? What lessons learned do they, ask those types of questions. And that's one of the reasons too. I mean, at Prevail, we have a partner network of different consultants and C3PAOs and that sort of thing, and we try to vet them as best we can to make sure that we don't have the people who are like, hey, you can have 110. Those are the kind of companies that we certainly want to work with. And I know that it breaks my heart that there are so many different people in the DIB who are like, well, I don't want to do with any of this now because, there's no truth here. I can't find somebody to help me that's going to give me what I need. And it's just, like you said, this is imperative to national security, and people are taking advantage of it so badly. And it's really disappointing, to say the least.
Let me just say two things. That if you hear this, run. All right. If you hear, no, you don't really have to have, Microsoft Business is fine. You don't need anything else. I talked to Microsoft people and they said it's okay. If you hear that, hang up the phone. Don't just hang up the phone. Block numbers. Don't ever talk to that person.
I like it
again. The other one
commercial is not enough.
Yeah. Well, there are products that can complement that. But I'm just saying, if they just say that by themselves,
hang up
the phone, block number, don't ever talk to them again. Okay. And then also, if you hear, well, it's really like CMMI, hang up the phone, block the number.
Never talk to them.
Yeah, right.
And I'm a CMMI associate as well. So I actually. And that's a very good point, because there are people out there who have done CMMI for different reasons. That was obviously, CMMI is very business process focused, which is great. However, it doesn't deal with practically any cyber. It has a very
does not provide protection for government data.
No, it has a very.
It's not its purpose.
Yeah, no, it's not its purpose. There are similarities in how CMMC was created, because it is created by this Carnegie Mellon Institute. I mean, there's similarities to how they developed it, but absolutely if you have a CMMI level 3, does not mean that you were a CMMC level 2.
I think we're going to need this discussion could go on for a while. I'm just cognizant of the time. So Jill, I don't know if you want to just kind of sum it up. I think you've told us a lot about needing to get your SPRS score, knowing that you could be subject to an assessment, and really highlighting the importance of protecting our CUI. I mean, what would, besides numbers to block and cause us to run, what would be your closing words to the audience?
The very first thing in your journey is to, aside from understanding that you have no choice. If you want to stay competitive, you want to stay in the game, you have to start that journey. Once that's understood, the second step is understand what your contract says.
Right.
Look for the DD 254. And then once you understand that, or if you're thinking you're not really completely understanding the implications, look for a consultant, because nobody can do this alone. And even with companies that have really robust IT systems admin people, and this is not a sysadmin issue. This is an executive. This is a COO. This is a C-suite issue, by the way.
Right.
And even with that, everybody needs. This journey is just too complicated. There's too many. Like, for instance, you can charge about the government, depending what the contract clauses. There's all these little nuances that can make a difference in your competitive edge. Don't do it alone, but get with people who are informed and experts that can help you, stay competitive. And also, this is an opportunity to develop a competitive edge, because the people that aren't going to start this journey.
Very true.
All right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Jill, it's a pleasure. We look forward to having you back sometime soon on the show and having our audience benefit from your immense knowledge in this field. Thank you to you. Thank you to EisnerAmper Digital for lending us to you for the hour. And so we will talk to you again soon.
Well, y'all be blessed. Have a great day.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.